So, I'm in Bristol docks. Watch to find out why. Today's video is sponsored by Heart of the Tribe Gallery, where art meets community. More about that later. Well then, ladies and gentlemen, you find me here in Bristol docks, and behind me I hope you can see Mr. I.K.Brunel. I'll move the camera just in case because I can't see what I'm looking at. We're here today for a guided tour around the Victorian docks with the great Mr. Brunel himself showing us where everything is. So let's go and have a look, shall we?
And I've got Mark, my wonderful colleague today. He's just as amazing as me in his own way, all right? So he's just as incredible. One day you have a museum built of him somewhere in the country, hopefully. Excellent stuff. So, to begin the walking tour, we're going to be talking about modern past times, all right? So we're going to be looking back and reflecting on the wonderful city that we've got today. Bristol today is a pleasure city. It's a recreational city. Yachts and boats in the harbour, ferry services going up and down, just like this chap here delivering the number 7 boat company, cross harbour ferry going backwards and forwards. Boat built by James Dyson, so I'm told.
Aye, side by side.
Side by James Dyson, just down there. Of course, no introduction, he makes vacuum cleaners in today's world. But this is one of his first ever engineering projects, sat in the harbour just there, a little gem, a little nugget. This is also what this tour is about. It's not just talk about me with all my might and craziness. It's also pointing out the little hidden gems of Bristol as well that we're going around to see. But where does Bristol hold its roots? Dates back to the Romans. They built a harbour down in Sea Mills. They had a much more sensible head than the folks of the Saxon era. They decided to build the harbour closer to the mouth of the river, down further in. And Bristol then finds its roots much later on. First ever mentioned in the Domesday Book. Sounds all doom and gloom, it actually is. It's a tax book by William the Conqueror for taxations across the country. Bristol's mentioned in there because Bristol pays them a little extra money to say, hey look, King William, can we be paid less tax please? And he says, yep, of course. So Bristol pays less taxes during King William's reign. And of course, Bristol is most notorious for the slave trade, starting during the 1500s up until its abolishment. All money coming into Bristol during that time period, the huge economic power Bristol was, of tobacco and cotton and sugar coming in. To give you some idea of how powerful Bristol was during this period, it would sometimes sit above the London Mayor. So Bristol was the most powerful city in the UK and had basically total control over its economy during this period. And then the period where I come in is a very interesting period. Bristol is, of course, the slave trade's abolished. That means a lot of the trade and goods come in. They have to be refined and change procedures. And a lot of the money slowly dries up. But from the projects I produce, it brings a new leaf of life into Bristol. And one of which we're going to see quite a few of them today, but luckily enough we're starting off very close to one, the Great Britain. So let's hop, skip and a jump just round the corner and let's talk about, yes, this Great Britain. No finer place to start than the very reason we're here today, the SS Great Britain. This bit of land we're standing on was purposely built and designed for the construction of this very ship. So it now sits in the very place it was actually built 181 years ago. This ship is magnificent. It is the most advanced ship in the world at the time because the combination of 2 bits of technology, an iron hull and a screw propeller. These bits of technology exist on separate vessels, but this is the first time they've been combined, which makes it a very impressive ship. It took 4 years to build. From July 19, 1839, it was launched on the same day 4 years later by Prince Albert and my father, Mark Brunel, in this very spot. When it was launched, it was the equivalent of a 5-star hotel at sea. Gold trimming inside and out. We still represent that to this very day with gold trimming on the exterior of the ship. Gold leaf in today's world. Coated marble inside. Carpeted flooring throughout the ship. It was meant to rival the finest mansions and hotels on land, built to carry 200 people to New York, double the amount of my first ship, the Great Western, which we'll be talking about a little bit later on, and built to go across the ocean in about 2 weeks, 14 days. And prior to these two ships, it used to take 6 weeks to get across the ocean. So enormous time difference. Didn't live very long going to New York. It was run aground off the coast of Ireland on its 5th voyage going out, and it took 11 months to rescue. It was a huge effort, and then it was sold on to new owners, a new company. This company is called Gibbs Bright. Some of you may recognise the name. They used to own a house called Tintsfield, not far from here, just over the other side of Ashton Court. Bright family is very big in Australia today, and that's exactly where they would be going, Australia. The ship was converted from carrying 200 rich people only to 600. 100 first class, 100 second class, and 400 third class. They added an extra deck, rejigged the inside to the ship, added a new engine to get the space, and it took 2 months to get to Australia, 60 days at sea. The first scheduled ship to arrive in Melbourne, changing a time from 6 months down to 2. That is mighty impressive. It did this for 23 years, from the 1850s to the 1870s. It was the fastest ship going out, carried in total around 30,000 people there and back. It did 1 million nautical miles, that's right, and of course circumnavigated the globe more than 30 times as well. So a huge achievement for a ship that was only built to go to New York City. After 23 years of service, it was then sold again to actually Anthony Gibbs, one of the sons, and he converted the ship from being what we call like an emigrant ship to a coal carrier. So everything you see on board was completely gutted. All the engines gutted, all the sense of luxury style gold trimmings gutted. 2 huge coal bunkers were installed for 1,000 tons each. Destination San Francisco. The ship now carrying coal, Welsh coal as well, so if any of you from Wales, you would be very happy that Welsh coal, some of the best in the world, they pride themselves on it, and every corner of the world wanted to have a piece of it. On one of these voyages in 1886, there was a severe storm off the coast of the Falkland Islands. They sought refuge in Port Stanley, and it was severely storm damaged, and it was left there until 1970, when a team of people went out with a barge, a submersible barge I must say, and they rescued it off the sandbanks and brought it back to Bristol, and then spent 54 years restoring it to its former glory. It's a very poetic and romantic story in a way, to see the ship, which was built to go to New York, change to do a different job, become monumentous in it, amazing, to be converted to become the very thing that she proved to fight against, a sailing ship, is now back here as a monument to history and the history of the maritime world as well, and showing you this is what was before aeroplanes. This was the sense of pride and luxury that you had going across the sea, and it's absolutely marvellous. If any of you have been on before, you will understand and know that. For those of you who haven't, one day, do go on it. I know I would be biased because A, I'm working for him, and B, I'm Mr. Brunel, but honestly, you won't regret it. And that is hand on heart telling you the truth, you won't regret it, all right? So, talked about the Great Britain and its amazing accomplishments, summed up 40 years history at sea, summed up in probably about 5 minutes. But where does this all begin? Well, it all began with the Great Western, which is the first ship I briefly mentioned. Got a lovely poster over here. But the Great Western story, we're going to go to where it was actually launched, because it was launched here in Bristol in 1838, up where the M Shed now sits. So we're going to head up there. We'll point out a few interesting things along the way. If you have any questions, please feel free. But other than that, let's begin our walking tour properly. Now, a few of you might be wondering why you're here. You're on a Brunel tour. Surely it should be about bridges and railways and all that. But this is one of those little bits of nuggets that made us want to do this tour. Because as well as it's all very important, talking about the railways and bridges and stuff, the societal history is just as important during this period. because Britain's going through a whole host of changes. Look, even this dog's very happy to be here as well. What's the dog's name, by the way?
Pixie.
Pixie. What a fantastic name, Pixie. There you go. You're happy to be in Queen Square as well. So the reason why we're here is because in 1831, there's a big riot in Bristol. It happens in October. And it's all because at the moment there are lots of reforms going through government to allow people in the lower class to have a bigger say in Parliament for voting and so on. And coming to Bristol is an anti-reformist politician. And he's quite well spoken and quite well, how can I say it? He's very verbal about how he thinks of the lower class. And he comes here to Queen Square, which at this point in history is basically the power centre of Bristol. This is where most of the government buildings are. Just behind us over here is where the first ever American consul to the UK was actually based. So we're in amongst a lot of money around this area. About 500 men come down here protesting for their rights to have the anti-reformer listen to them, but it all turned very violent. And of course, the next few nights, this place is turned into a burning mess. Carriages are caught on fire, bonfires are lit, buildings are set on fire around this place due to people taking that peaceful protest and turning it into quite an extreme event. And during this time, I sign up to be a special constable. I know, part of the police force. The little hidden nugget. And the reason why I've joined part of the police force to put the riots down is the bridge is being funded by a lot of people around this area and a lot of people in the Clifton area. So it's likely that I'm doing it as a form of public stunt to try and gain more support from those people that can continue funding money into the bridge. Because already the bridge was looking a bit sceptical on the financial side. And they patrol around this place armed reportedly with a chair leg. Memory's a bit rusty on that one, but reportedly by a chair leg. And I even make an arrest. I arrest this looter, as I called him, and I hand him off to what I thought was another special constable. Turned out it was his friend dressed up in a police officer's outfit, and he got away scot-free. Whether or not I know that, I don't exactly remember. But either way, it's a funny little story about what happens in this few nights of turmoil. Several people died, about 100 people got injured during this period, and Bristol was placed under temporary martial law. The army actually come in to quell and put down the rest of the looters, making sure that all order was restored. But then again, we get into more brutality from the army and looters and vice versa. Eventually, they formed into a new council system, which has started the groundwork for what the council system we got today is. And also, as well, those reforms would eventually come into place over the coming years. So those men didn't die in vain. Some of them, they did actually get the reforms across that they wanted, as for better conditions for the lower class and a say to vote on the laws that would be affecting them as well. So very good in that part. But what did it mean for me? For the bridge, it was a nail in the coffin, really, or one of the final nails in the coffin. A lot of the people who were on the richer end saw the violence in Bristol that year, and they decided to move elsewhere across the country. Clifton lost a large part of its population, moving across the country to get away from these ravenous youths and young folk and young men wanting their say. They didn't want to mix with these people. They get far away as possible from, because they might be next. So they left Bristol. And those people were the people supporting and funding the bridge over the Clifton Gorge. So money started to dry up, but it wouldn't be until 1833 the final nail in the coffin for the bridge was solidified. And rather ironically, I don't think the history books will quite correlate the two together, but I think I have, and I think I know why the bridge stopped. The ending of slavery in Bristol was 1833. All the money officially dried up in Bristol. Bristol really struggled for the next 2 to 3 years. No one had any money. No one had any money to fling around and pay for. And it just so happens that 1833 is the same year the bridge is cancelled. put two and two together. Now, I think you can see where that's going. Anyway, we'll be seeing the bridge. We're not actually going to go up to it because that's quite a long walk up it, but we will be seeing it from the gorge later on, so you can see the people who finished it in all its glory. But we're going to go now to a little nugget. Again, a little nugget like Queen Square. We'll go to a place called Brunel House. It's just behind College Green. So we'll be passing Bristol Cathedral along the way to talk about the railways. So, if you follow me, let's go to Brunel House. One of my wonderful friends just here has brought up the fact that the reason I come to Bristol is due to a severe accident, which is only partly true. I was in a severe accident in the Thames Tunnel, and if you read the history books, it will tell you that I came to Bristol to recuperate. What history books doesn't tell you is that the reason I'm here in Bristol is because I got told off by my father for my events in Brighton, where, how can I word this so it's workplace appropriate? I got into trouble with certain women of the night, and in quite a lot of trouble, and I was called back to London, then sent off to Bristol to get away from it, which is quite ironic because Bristol was worse for it than Brighton. But lucky enough, there was a bridge involved, and lucky enough my mind was distracted elsewhere. But that's the real reason I actually came to Bristol, was because I was told off in Brighton.
That's better.
So there might be a few people running around in Brighton with sideburns who are really fascinated with bridges and they don't understand why. Anyway, the reason we're here today is actually the building behind me, and today looks nothing but in a third person moment just here. This is the very reason we wanted to do these tours, was because of these little nuggets just here. It's all well and good talking about the big and exciting things, but Brunel did some amazing little things in Bristol, and this is one of them. And a huge connection point, because this is the Royal Western Hotel. This is the site of which the hotel connected both the railway and steamship company. The idea is you get on a train from London all the way down to Bristol. It took 5 hours on the train. It used to take you 5 days by horse and cart. 5 hours on a train to Bristol. You then get on these horse and carts, they trot you down into the entrance just down on the right, they head around the back, and they would unload you in the goods. You would stay in the hotel overnight, and then another horse and cart would pick you up the next day, take you down to the harbour side where you aboard a vessel, and then take you all the way out to the mouth of the River Avon to board the Great Western, which is this huge ship that couldn't even get into Bristol by this point in history because of the paddle wheels on the side of the ship. So an enormous logistical challenge and logistical feat. And this building, we don't know much about it. We know it was built in 1840. It was launched in 1840 with the tail end of the railway being finished. It remained a hotel up until 1855, where it was converted to be a Turkish bathhouse, and remained that point for many years until eventually, in and around the 1970s, the back bit of the building was dismantled, keeping the facade the same, and it is now, of all things in Bristol, student accommodation. But they've kept the name. They put the name Brunel House, which is only partially true because it is mine, but it's not a house. It is a hotel after all. But it's one of these little nuggets and little gems that sits in Bristol. It's kindly kept out the way that you probably might walk by every day and not even realise what it is. But now you do. There is a hotel built for those elite people travelling on the railway to go to New York. And if you imagine the ships have a real gold on there and coated marble, and that is on a ship, imagine what I would do to a hotel on land. And sadly, we may never know what I did because we don't actually have the designs of the interior of the building. They are still lost to us at this moment in time. But who knows? Maybe in an attic somewhere, dusted, and got a few cobwebs on there. There are the drawings and plans for that hotel. And it's one of the reasons I love history, is you'll never know it all, but you will know enough to keep you excited for when eventually it comes along, and you'll be absolutely thrilled. So we're at the halfway point now of the tour. So You're doing well, guys. You're doing well. Even Pixie, look at her. She's doing absolutely amazing. Look at her. She has no clue what's going on, but she's loving it. And before we leave here, there's one little nugget as well, and that is the Mauritania. Up there, just where that truck is, up on the left, there's a pub. We used to be called the Mauritania. Now it's called Java Bar, and I absolutely love it for one reason. And this is showing my nerdness coming out now, because it has the furniture from the RMS Mauritania in there. I don't know what the Mauritania is. It's the sister ship to the Lusitania that was competing for Titanic and Olympic going across the Atlantic Ocean. Mauritania's furniture, or some of it, ended up in that bar over there. When it was broken up, its furniture was sold and its carpentry sold all around the country. A vast majority of it was sold and bought by owners in Bristol, and lots of it sits in the Java Bar today. And I'm happy enough that I've sat in some of those chairs and benches, and I must admit I was very happy. But yes, if you too are a ship nerd and you love big ocean liners, please go to the Java Bar Mauritania and relish some of those old Cunard bits of furniture, alright? Because we're here at the Cumberland Basin. This is the gateway to the world now. This is, you know, the Great Western in Great Britain. This was the gateway to North America, going down this channel, going across to new land, new sights, new signs. It's so magnificent, this spot. So what better to commemorate it with the ultimate Bristol icon, the Clifton Suspension Bridge. The concept for the bridge actually goes way before me, back in the early 1700s, for a stone bridge to go across back in the day. Oh, please don't go near that edge, you poor Pixie. However, it really starts to gain traction in the turn of the 1800s. And I cannot talk about the bridge without mentioning an amazing lady called Sarah Guppy. Sarah Guppy is widely considered to be the first recognised female engineer in the world, and she submitted a design for the bridge to go over the gorge. Thomas Guppy, who is her son, there we go, got that one out. Thomas Guppy, the son of Sarah, was actually a best friend of mine and worked on the ship. And Thomas's nephew is who the Guppy fish is named after. So the Guppy family rightfully deserve their own museum. But my bridge going over the gorge wasn't actually going to be a reality. And my original concept was a lot different. I wanted the bridge to be built into the gorge, not sat on top of it as it is today. So you're meant to enter in through a tunnel, you come out onto the gorge itself. The original competition was ran by a man called Thomas Telford, one of the most repertoire engineers in the Victorian period. And he didn't like any of the bridge designs, so he threw them all out and declared his own the winner. You know, that's a bit stingy, to be honest with you. If you're the judge and you hate everyone else's, so you draw one up and go, that one's better, my one's the winner. The bridge committee didn't like that, because they didn't like how ugly it looked. These two huge towers going directly down into the gorge. So they got rid of Telford and said, thank you, but no thanks. And then they decided they would judge their own. I submitted a few more designs, one of which is very similar to the bridge we got today. I didn't win that one either, I come second place in it. But after sweet talking to the bridge committee, I convinced them that my design would be cheaper. Forward in time, that was completely wrong. Back in the day, it's a brilliant move. So, in 1829, the building of the bridge began. Legend says that we got the best archer in the country to fire the connecting rope between one side of the gorge to the other. The reality is you dropped one side of the rope down, pulled it across and pulled it up the other end. Much more boring, to be honest with you. And then a basket was set up to connect the two sides of the gorge together, where men materials would move across. And on one such day, I actually got stuck in the basket in the middle of the gorge, dangling roughly where the middle of the bridge is. There's no bridge above us, there's only about 70 metres of water below. I climbed on the outside of the basket, got my cane swinging about, jammed it in the rope, what was blocking it, freed it wherever it was, and huzzah, went straight across back to the other side. Very happy about that. I'm very flamboyant, very adventurous. Don't shy away from danger. Just climb on the side of a basket dangling over the gorge. What was finished by 1833, remember I said the nail in the coffin was 1833, money dried up. By that point, the only thing that was finished was the brick foundations the towers now sit on, and the towers themselves. They weren't decorated either, they were meant to be decorated in Egyptian hieroglyphics and with sphinxes on the top of the towers. Because in the 1830s, everything was about Egypt. If we could took the Pyramid of Giza and put it in London, we probably would have. But everything else we took instead. few decades later, I suffer a terminal case of dying. It was very unfortunate because I never got to see the bridge being finished. I got to talk about the bridge in a flamboyant way, otherwise it just doesn't work. I used to have a small case of dying before being resurrected today. I was having a very nice kip in Kensington Cemetery, thank you very much. Hopefully this is really worth it. Anyway, some engineers in 1860 decided that just seeing these towers stand empty was really sad. Compared to the legacy that I left the country, they wanted to finish it off as a tribute. They didn't even credit themselves. They credited me in the designing of the finished bridge. And in actual retrospect, people say it's not my bridge, and I kind of agree with them because I didn't fully finish it. But the chains to the bridge come from the Hungerford Bridge in London, which is what I built. They were recycled and used in the construction for this bridge. So the only thing I didn't really design was the roadway itself. It's built for foot traffic only, and today it takes 500,000 cars every year. Very incredible. And today it stands as an icon, not just to me and the testament of an engineer, but to Bristolians and Bristol. When we think of Bristol, we close our eyes, you probably think of the Clifton Suspension Bridge, one of the first things you think about. It's the icon not just to me, but to the people of Bristol. And we couldn't do a Brunel tour without including the bridge in one form or another. And if you've seen the sponsored post on Facebook, you're looking at my muttley hair and looking at the bridge. Excellent. So, we're now going to turn around and we're going to head to the Underfall Yard, which is our penultimate stop, before eventually heading back to the SS Great Britain. Let's take a nice gentle stroll back down to Underfall Yard. That's one of the old hydraulic pumps. Every year the Matthew is pulled up on this slipway. You're asleep tonight, you're sleepwalking tonight.
I sit out all day for my class. I'm like, oh.
We're now at the Underfall. Before we talk about the Underfall, just want to mention they had a really bad arson attack over a year ago now. It's when we actually started these tours, the first ever weekend we started them. And he's a convicted arsonist and he did it again here. And it's a hugely impactful bit of Bristol, this is, because this is where the blue and yellow ferry boats, this is where they do a lot of their over the winter maintenance and so on. So if you feel really privileged and proud of who you are and what you are, you can always donate to them, even if it's £1 or so, to help the recovery of the Underfall Yard. Just like to put that out there, because they're a nice group of people, you know, and they don't deserve the arson attack. Well, none of us do really, but...
And the lovely blacksmith as well.
I know!
Yeah.
You know.
I blacksmith with her.
Oh, there you go, see?
She was
The
lovely.
connections, you know, we got here, right? So I just got to mention that before we talk about, because it's important to me, and just like you, it's probably important to you as well. The Underfall Yard is a beautiful spot of Bristol history. It actually used to be called the Overfall at one point. So to talk about this, we need to mention a name called William Jessup. He is a canal builder in the turn of the 1800s, and he has been appointed by the people of Bristol to build basically a floating harbour. The idea is a canal on a harbour scale, because Bristol has the second highest tidal range in the world, 15 metres in some areas, and you might have heard of the phrase ship shape in Bristol fashion. It comes from the fact of vessels like the Matthew would be moored up and they would have to have huge stilts underneath to hold them up. Otherwise, as the water subsided, the ship would literally crumble and collapse, splitting in two under their own bottom, due to just the lack of water underneath. But William Jessup came up with this amazing idea of basically cutting off the harbour, cutting off the river here, locking it, has like a big canal, and then digging a whole new river out, 2 miles long, linking back up down the other end. It's often referred to by locals as the New Cut. Now, to begin with, William Jessup installed an overfall. So the idea is, it's kind of like an overfall on your bath. So the water here would flow out into the New Cut, therefore keeping the water level in the harbour consistently the same. That solves one issue, but doesn't solve the problem of silt and dirt in the harbour, which would very frequently build up very quickly from ships bringing it in. And the River Avon and River Severn is naturally a very dirty river. So to sum up and fix that problem, they got me involved. And I installed an underfall. So much like an overfall, where you got the on top of your bath, an underfall is the plug. So underneath the harbour, at several points along here, these huge metal sluice gates. And they're at different levels. And the idea is you open them and they let out all the soot and mud into the New Cut. And dredgers would go up and down the harbour, shifting that soot and mud down to the gates, and they would eject that out. And one of which was Bertha, which was a boat that I built during the 1830s before I designed all these big and wonderful ships that I would later do. And as we go around the corner in a moment, we'd actually see one of those sluice gates from a distance. And that sluice gate was only taken out in like the 1960s odd to be replaced because it got cracked. So it's over 130 years old and still was doing its job. And there are ones down there probably just as old doing the same job now. There we go. This is the original sluice gate from 1832. That is installed underneath. There's several of these at different points. Absolutely incredible. They were replaced in 1995, so I was slightly out with the number, so even more years being used than I thought it was. A testament to Victorian engineering and the idea of we didn't just build things, we build them to last. You know, this lasted over 100 years doing its job in and out in the harbour and so on. Absolutely incredible.
And it hasn't been graffitied on.
It hasn't been graffitied. The youths of today really do respect Willy Wonka. That's all I can say. Right.
Well then, ladies and gentlemen, with the tour group disappeared in the background there, that's the end of the tour. We're at the underfall yard at the far end of the floating dock here. Now, just beyond those buildings over there behind me is, in fact, they say the 5th best fish and chip shop in the country. So I'm going to go and find out what that's all about. Let's go and have a look. The Heart of the Tribe Gallery is a community art gallery situated near the top of Glastonbury High Street. They host amazing exhibitions supporting local artists, and they have a beautiful secret garden out the back. So be sure to check them out and support local art.